What was the day when you decided that being too nice wasn't working anymore? My name is Clara Vaughn, and for most of my adult life, I wore nice like a badge of honor. I was the helper, the fixer, the yes woman. If someone needed something, I was there. If a deadline loomed, I stayed late. If someone dropped the ball, I'd pick it up without question. I thought kindness was my superpower. Turns out, it was my cage. It started gradually, like a leak behind the walls. I didn't notice the damage until the structure started to rot. I worked at a media agency called Easton & Company for almost 6 years. I joined right after college, full of energy, ambition, and a belief that going above and beyond would take me far. And for a while, it did. I became known as Reliable Clara. People would say, "Ask Clara, she'll take care of it." And I always did. I volunteered for the late nights, the thankless tasks, the clients from hell. I did it all with a smile because I thought that's what good employees did. And maybe they do. But I also believed that if I gave more, I'd be seen, appreciated, promoted. I was half right. My manager, Carol, was charming in the way that made you think she had your best interests at heart. She'd put a hand on your shoulder and say, "You're indispensable." She had a way of making you feel chosen. What I didn't realize was that she was choosing me for the heavy lifting while she floated on my work. I saw it early on, in little things. She'd present my ideas in meetings and not credit me, or she'd forward my emails as her own drafts. I let it slide. I told myself it didn't matter as long as the team won. But it did matter. It started to eat at me. The moment everything shifted was when my mom got sick. She was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, and I became her caregiver overnight. I asked Carol for some flexibility, just 2 days a week working remotely so I could take mom to appointments. Carol blinked slowly, smiled tightly, and said, "I suppose we can try it for a little while. But the team really needs you present." I was grateful. Too grateful. I doubled down on my in-office days, working harder than ever to compensate. I didn't complain. I made sure my responsibilities were covered. I didn't want to seem like a burden. 3 months in, Mom's treatment became more intense. The side effects hit harder. One Tuesday, Carol called me into her office and said, "This isn't sustainable. We need you full-time in the office again. You've had time to adjust." I explained that Mom couldn't drive herself. That I was the only one she had. Carol stared at me for a long time. "I understand," she said finally. "But we all make sacrifices." I nodded. And in doing so, I betrayed myself. The moment that broke me didn't come with fireworks. It was quiet, clinical. We had a massive pitch due for the Sinclair campaign. I spent weeks crafting every detail, researching trends, creating mock-ups, writing the copy, rehearsing. I even skipped one of Mom's chemo days to finalize the pitch. The day before the presentation, Carol asked to review my materials. I handed them over, everything, including my personal notes. The next morning, I arrived early, only to find the conference room full. Carol was already presenting. My slides. My words. My ideas. She was animated, charismatic, convincing. She saw me in the doorway, smiled, and said, "Clara, would you mind grabbing coffee for the clients?" I froze. One of the clients turned to me and said, "Aren't you the one presenting?" Before I could speak, Carol said, "Oh, Clara helped with some of the background work. But this is my project." I got the coffee. I stood in the back of the room and watched as they applauded her brilliance. The client signed a multi-year deal. The biggest in our firm's history. Carol got a bonus. She got promoted. I got a handwritten thank you note and a $25 coffee shop gift card. That night, Mom fell in the driveway. She was trying to get out of the Uber I had booked for her appointment. The driver didn't wait. She lay there for nearly 30 minutes until a neighbor found her. I wasn't there. I sat in my car outside the hospital and cried until I couldn't breathe. Then I went home and cried some more. Then I went to work the next day like nothing had happened. Carol announced a new division would be formed for the Sinclair account. She spoke about leadership, vision, and her plans. Then she introduced the first hire, Trent. A guy who had been with us for less than a year and spent most of his time in the break room watching sports highlights. I couldn't believe it. I'd built the project, every piece of it, and I wasn't even in the room. I walked into the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. My hands were shaking. My eyes were bloodshot. That was the moment. That exact moment when I decided being too nice wasn't working anymore. Something inside me hardened. Not cruelty. Not bitterness. But resolve. I walked back into the office and asked Carol for a word. She was celebrating with the execs, but I stood silently until she had no choice but to acknowledge me. She followed me into the hallway. I want to know why I wasn't considered for the Sinclair division, I said. Carol raised an eyebrow. We've already discussed that. It was a team effort. It wasn't. I did the work. I created the pitch. You took the credit. Her voice dropped. Careful, Clara. This isn't a good look for you. I didn't back down. I want to be placed on that team. I deserve to be. She actually laughed. You are more of a support person. That's where you shine. I could feel the anger burn in my throat. No. That's where I've been convenient. She narrowed her eyes. You are clearly emotional. Maybe you should take a day off. My phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. Mom was in surgery. Internal bleeding. I looked up at Carol. No. I'm not taking the day off. I'm quitting. She stared at me, stunned. You don't mean that. I do. I'm done letting you take credit for my work. I'm done being your fallback. I'm done choosing this place over my own life. The HR director and a senior exec had wandered over during the exchange. I turned to them. I've just resigned, I said. And for the record, I have all the files, timestamps, and email chains that prove I created the Sinclair campaign, including notes where Carol asked me to remove my name from the presentation. Carol turned pale. She's unstable. Her mother's sick and... No. I'm not unstable. I'm done. I walked out. Past the wide eyes. Past the silence. Past the people who never knew I had a spine. At the hospital, I held my mother's hand while she slept. I told her I'd quit. She smiled faintly, eyes closed. Good, she whispered. It's about time. The days that followed were a blur of recovery, hospital food, and quiet. I ignored the calls, the emails. Then one came from Margaret, the company's director of operations. Clara, I've reviewed everything. We let you down. Carol has been terminated. We'd like to offer you her position. I didn't know what to say. She continued. Full remote flexibility. A raise. And an official apology. I thought about it. Long and hard. And eventually, I said yes. Not because I needed the job. But because I had conditions. I built my own team. I demanded attribution policies. I asked for wellness days and mentorship programs. And to their credit, they agreed. It's been over a year now. Mom is in remission. She's taken up painting. She even came to the office Christmas party and made everyone laugh until they cried. As for me? I'm still kind. But I'm not a pushover. I lift up my team, and I make sure credit is given where it's due. Some old colleagues tried to test my boundaries. They quickly learned I don't bend like I used to. Last month, Carol applied for a role at another department. She didn't recognize my new married name. When she walked in for the interview and saw me, her face turned every color imaginable. I thanked her for her time. I didn't hire her. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I built something better. And there wasn't room for who she used to be. So when people ask, what was the day you decided being too nice wasn't working anymore? I tell them, it was the day I looked in the mirror and saw someone I didn't recognize and finally decided she deserved better. That's the day I stopped being nice to everyone else and started being fair to myself. If you've made it this far, thank you. If this story touched you or brought back memories of your own, just remember, you're not the only one. We all walk our own path, and often, the toughest chapters take us to the most meaningful destinations. You're welcome to share your experience in the comments. And if you're looking for more honest, emotional, and deeply human stories, subscribe to Family Stories. This is a space for sharing, understanding, and growing together. Until next time.